In the late 1990s, Rachel Beck says she was sexually harassed by two top Liberty University administrators. One was John Borek, then president of Liberty University. The other was Jay Spencer, former vice president of enrollment management. Today, you will hear Rachel's shocking story of how these men preyed on her when she was a 20-something employee at the school. You'll also hear how President Borek would follow her home and invite her to go hot tubbing, and how Spencer, under the guise of protecting her from Borek, groomed her into a sexual relationship with him. But as shocking as those revelations are, what's even more shocking is what happened when Spencer's sexual misconduct was discovered. Liberty quietly dismissed Spencer and reportedly gave him a $100,000 severance. He went on to serve several years as the head of marketing at the American Association of Christian Counselors. But in 2007, despite his sexual misconduct, Liberty rehired Spencer as an academic dean and then as an associate provost. And he currently serves as the associate provost of online learning at Houston Christian University. He's also the head of marketing at the Association of Christian Health Professionals. Meanwhile, Rachel Beck has been living under a cloak of secrecy for the past 26 years. She says in 1999, Liberty reneged on a promise to ship her belongings to Washington State, where she'd moved. So Rachel got a lawyer and entered into mediation with Liberty. And as part of Rachel's settlement with Liberty, Rachel had to sign a non-disclosure agreement, or NDA. But on this podcast, Rachel Beck breaks her silence, and for the first time ever, she tells her story of rampant corruption and cover-up at the largest Christian university in the country. Her story also incriminates several of Liberty's current trustees and key administrators, as well as Liberty's founder, Jerry Falwell Sr., and current Liberty Chancellor, Jonathan Falwell. So stay tuned. My explosive interview with whistleblower Rachel Beck is next. Welcome to the Roys Report, a podcast dedicated to reporting the truth and restoring the church. I'm Julie Roys, and joining me today is Rachel Beck, now a 52-year-old mother living in the mountains of Montana. But in 1998, she was a scared and traumatized 24-year-old who felt like she wore a scarlet letter. And for the record, we're using Rachel's maiden name because that's how she would have been known during her time at Liberty. As is so often the case, Rachel was blamed for relationships she was groomed into by a man twice her age who was also her boss. And all of it was covered up by an institution that claims to be training champions for Christ. So Rachel, thank you so much for taking this courageous step and being willing to tell your story.
Thank you, Julie. It's a big step.
It is a big step. And I know for you, breaking your silence when you have been silenced almost 3 decades is absolutely huge. In fact, when we were talking earlier, you said even your husband didn't know about this when you got married. I mean, this is something that you buried so far under. And so I'm sure people are wondering now, especially with the NDA, especially with what you've been through, why are you talking now? Why are you breaking your silence?
For one, I think the Lord has always put on my heart that my story wouldn't be silent forever. And so I've always just known that at some point I would be able to have my story back. And I just didn't know the timing. And the timing was actually not what I would have picked, but for some reason what the Lord wanted. It was the week I was moving from Washington State to Montana. And 4 days before I moved, I got a call from the Washington. I got calls, I got emails, and reached out to messages on LinkedIn by the Washington Post and the USA Today wanting to know. Someone had given them my name. And at that point, I just thought, I can't, there's nothing I can do. I didn't know what was going on with Liberty. I had vaulted everything about Liberty in my life for years. After 1999, when we settled in mediation, I vaulted it. Like I said, even my now ex-husband had no idea, his family. In order for me to survive, I had to vault it. And so in 2023, when I was reached out, I started understanding that they were being investigated by the Department of Education, and all of a sudden I started learning about all these situations and stories and Title IX reps being fired and people, this is where I get a little emotional, people standing up for stories just like mine, and Liberty firing them over that, and realizing that it's time, it's got to stop. I mean, it's gone on for too long. And it's, as we'll go over, it's the same men that have continued the story for almost 30 years.
A lot of the same men. And stunning to me in a way, but again, I totally get that you had, as you say, vaulted, put this away in a vault. You didn't want to talk about it. You didn't want to think about it. But in 2020, with the scandal with Jerry Falwell Jr., I mean, all of that, you didn't even know about that till that reporter called. Is that correct?
I had learned a little bit of the scandal with Jerry Jr. Because that was so public. Yeah. I didn't know about this class action lawsuit with this group of Jane Does. There's so much that it just started unraveling itself. And I thought during that investigation that my story would be found out. I thought they would find records. I thought finally I'm not going to have to do anything because it will be exposed. And then when I found out they had settled, I think it was around February of 24, I was devastated because I thought, nobody found my story. People know it's out there. The same people on the board who covered it up, they knew. There's no way that it, in the back of their mind, it wasn't, they knew. And I thought, Lord, why is this door being shut again? Why don't I get my story back? And that's when I just thought, it's time. It's time. Because it will continue. They've created a culture there, and a cover up that they all cover up for each other. And so it's their culture.
Absolutely it is. And I've been following this for several years now. In fact, reported on one of the main Jane Does who had been essayed when she was at Liberty, and it was never reported to Clary, became, as part of the Clary Act, you have to report these crimes on campus. It never was reported. They got fined. And she wanted justice, and she was part of the class action suit. And I talked to several other women who were involved in that class action suit that settled horribly. I mean, they gave these women hardly anything for what they had done. And they thought, from what I understand, Liberty was giving the impression that, oh, we know you were done wrong. We'll make it right. But they didn't. And then there was another investigation, as you referenced, the Department of Education. Liberty got a record $14 million fine. Again, $14 million. I hear that and I go, whoa, $14 million. But to Liberty, with the budget they have, this is a drop in the bucket, right? I mean, this is nothing. And the Department of Education did this investigation. As you mentioned, trustees knew about your story. You were never interviewed. And of course, you're under an NDA, so you're feeling like your hands are tied. As you move forward, though, and you found out more information, I don't know how much you're at liberty to talk about, but it seems like you feel that you are able to talk about some things that you didn't before. Can you explain that?
I think, when I went through this in 98, 99, mind you, we just watched, the world had watched Monica Lewinsky go through her scandal the year before. Me Too wasn't a thing yet. Everything was so different then. And now so many laws have changed. I feel like if I don't speak out and people like me don't speak out, we're going to stalemate at a place in these laws. And I think there's so much more work we need to do to make it a blanket. No, you don't get to cover this up.
And women like you who have stepped out sort of on the front lines, you break the silence. I've often said that fear is contagious, but so is courage. And so I hope there are women listening today who take courage in your story. And I know that they will, because every time we publish a podcast like this or release an investigation, women come forward, other women who have been victimized. And so I know the seat that you're sitting in is a tough one to sit in. And I am just in awe of women like you, who I get to platform and elevate your story, because these stories so badly need to be told. And so just absolutely honored to be here with you doing this podcast.
Well, Julie, honestly, like, all of us thank you, because I didn't even know you were out there until I randomly discovered you on, it was a God thing, I believe, on social media. And I found this whole group of women doing this. And I thought that's what gives us courage to come forward, is you providing a place for us to come forward.
And that has been a God thing. It's not something I ever endeavored to do, but God has brought this together, and he really has formed this community. And again, just such an honor to be able to stand with other survivors who have been through just horrific abuse and harassment. Let's go back to 1990s, when you came to Liberty. I understand you grew up in a home where, even though you're on the other end of the country, you grew up in Washington State and very far from Lynchburg, Virginia, where Liberty University is. But your parents were big fans of Jerry Falwell Sr. He had a TV program, radio program, so he was heard around the country. And the Moral Majority had been an incredible force in the 1980s in getting Reagan elected, and other main politicians, and even I remember in the late 1980s, early 1990s, it was kind of like, oh, our job has been done. America's been made moral, which is kind of funny. But the irony of what you're going to tell in this story that happened at the school that was founded by Jerry Falwell Sr., who was the founder of the Moral Majority, unbelievable. But I mean, tell me about, in your home, how Jerry Falwell Sr. was viewed, and your view of Liberty University at the time.
I was born in Memphis, and my dad was part of the Jesus movement. He actually went to Hyles-Anderson College, whatever it was, years ago.
Yeah, I reported on Hyles-Anderson, yes.
Yeah. So he swung from being involved in the Elvis thing in Memphis, and you know, part of the Jesus movement, got saved and went way far the other way. You know, independent, premillennial, whatever the tags Jack Hyles
Fundamental
used.
Baptist, I would think.
Yeah.
Which IFB is an animal all its own. I mean, that is a very, very fundy kind of church, but also so much sexual abuse in that church that was covered up. Very patriarchal.
Which is ironic, because we also did the whole IBLP, Bill Gothard. We had the games, we had the characteristic books, all that stuff. So that would have been probably, early 80s-ish. I know my dad, when Jerry Falwell was selling bricks to build the school, he bought my brother and I and my mom and him a brick. So I have a brick somewhere, supposedly at Liberty. And he always wanted us to go there. Fast forward through childhood, there was my brother was scheduled to go to Liberty. He was a year behind me. And I had taken a semester off and then was going to a school outside of Seattle. And my brother had a friend that summer who was killed. And so I thought, and he had witnessed this tragic accident. And I thought, well, I need to transfer and go with my brother to be with him during this time. And I wanted to go to a bigger school. And I didn't research Liberty. I had one other friend going there. And so 3 weeks before school started, I transferred out there. Not really reading a lot about Liberty. My dad had Liberty and Pensacola on his list for us to go to. I didn't fit at Pensacola. But anyway, so we chose Liberty. That's how I got there. My first semester, I did not like it at all. I called my parents and told them that I wanted to come home. Liberty was more rigid than what I grew up in, even though my family was considered very strict for Washington, my area. It was nothing like what Liberty was.
See,
I remember
shocking.
calling them.
Wow.
I'm like, get me home. I've been here for 3 weeks. I want to come home. And they were like, no, you have to finish at least the first semester because that's what we paid for. And so I did.
Yeah.
And I stuck it out,
Yeah.
You start making friends and you become part of the culture. And when you have that many students, the girls wearing skirts 2 inches above the middle of your knee and boys wearing ties, you're all in it together. You really are. So you just kind of forget about all that stuff.
That is shocking to me, though. I mean, coming from a independent fundamental Baptist kind of background, at least your dad did, and the Bill Gothard, I mean, that was a lot of rules. That was pretty strict. And finding that Liberty's even more strict than that. That's surprising to me.
I felt it was. I would say, my parents were very strict. Liberty was it was more, legalistic strict, I guess. It was much more, I felt more under the microscope, I guess.
So part of that strictness, as I understand, was the Liberty Way. And I went to Wheaton College, so we had a pledge.
Yeah.
But it was like, no drinking, no dancing, those sorts of things. And there certainly wasn't penalties for infractions. I never really got in trouble, so I don't know what that was like. But we just, it wasn't nearly because you sent me the Liberty Way. You sent me part of what it was when you were there because you kept this. The honor code states that each student has a responsibility to maintain an exemplary testimony. Each student is expected to fulfill his responsibilities to the honor code. Now that sounds pretty normal and generic, but then has a statement, we the students, faculty, and staff of Liberty University will not break the moral and ethical standards of this institution, nor tolerate those who do. Oh. This is the part where I was just kind of like, wow, what is going on? And it spells it out. If a student witnesses an infraction, for example, they're required to confront the offending student and tell him or her to turn themselves in within 48 hours to the resident director. They also must immediately report an infraction to student development. If they don't do this, they could be held accountable for the infraction that the student did. So, I mean, you're basically, if you witness it, it's like you committed it if you don't turn it in, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So is this an environment where you feel like everybody's narking on everybody? I mean,
yes.
Is that, wow.
Especially I think after you get used to it, but especially my freshman year, you feel like, can I trust anyone here? Can I do anything? If I mess up, am I going to get kicked out? If I make a decision that normal college kids are doing all over the rest of the world, am I going to have to pay a fine and be embarrassed? And is my Christianity and my faith going to be called out because, I did something against the Liberty Way? I was thinking this morning when I was going over these, the Liberty Way, I thought, if you and I were roommates and you kissed your boyfriend and I didn't tell on you, I get in trouble for it makes no sense. I get the same. You couldn't
kiss your boyfriend even?
Oh, there was all kinds of, we weren't allowed to, you were supposed to do dating with a third party. There was all kinds of.
Wow. Yeah. And so again, there are a lot of strict schools. I mean, Bob Jones was super strict. And what is just so ironic about all of this, and we'll get to it, is then what you experienced was happening with the people at the very top of this school who are supposed to be setting the example and living by these standards. But let me just highlight a few of this Liberty Way. Fines for infractions: $70 for lying, or allowing an unauthorized visitor into your room, $100 for, and a 4-day suspension for lying during an official investigation. I guess people were officially investigated, students. I don't know how they had the staff for this. I mean, there's a lot of students. I would guess.
The irony of lying under investigation right there, when I read that, I just...
Yeah. It's the hypocrisy, right? And we know that there were women who were victims of SA who said they would get in trouble because maybe they had been drinking alcohol. Literally get in trouble because they had been drinking alcohol. Which, I mean, think about that. Unbelievable. Of course, sexual harassment was not allowed. And that was spelled out: unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, other conduct or comments of a sexual nature. $150 fine and administrative withdrawal for spending the night with a person of the opposite sex or immorality. Again, the irony when you begin to tell us what you experienced at the top, and now even what we know of has been exposed that Jerry Falwell Jr. was involved in. Just an unbelievable amount of hypocrisy. But I'm curious, when you were a student, did you see any of the hypocrisy, or did you kind of feel like, oh yeah, I mean, everybody's pretty much staying to the honor code, at least of the staff and administration and all that? Did you have a generally positive view of them?
I think so. I mean, I think at every school, I think a lot of people feel like the athletes get away with more, and I definitely feel like that with Liberty. There was a definite kind of a difference in the treatment of them, but you just kind of knew that was part of the game. I think I moved off campus by my junior year, which was good for me, because it provided me to live kind of normally, I feel like.
But would you describe yourself as rebellious at that stage of the game?
Maybe my freshman year, I pushed the rules a little bit. We had crazy rules, though. They would come in our rooms, and we had pictures of our family on the walls, and they were at the beach in your bathing suit. That wasn't allowed because that was out of dress code. At that time, we weren't allowed to wear bathing suits. You had to be doing a sports activity to have shorts on. Otherwise, until 4:00, girls had to be in skirts no more than 2 inches above the middle of your knee. Your straps had to be 2 inches wide. I had a professor who was on the board as well, female, who would come by with her measuring tape and literally measure our straps to make sure they were 2 inches wide.
The only woman on the board at that time was Beverly LaHaye, right? So
she
would measure.
Professor. Mm-hmm.
Wow. And she would measure those straps.
She was
God
tough.
forbid we see those shoulders.
She was tough. Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty crazy. So you graduated in 1996. My understanding is you began working at Liberty in 1997. Kind of surprising. You must have really gotten used to the culture that you chose to work there. But again, you make friends, you get established. I know when I first started at Wheaton, I thought I will never live in Illinois. And here I am, 30 some years later, still living in Illinois. So, but you began working, as an admissions counselor. So you were under Jay Spencer, who was the head of that department. And then you also took a part-time job because I guess one full-time job wasn't enough for you. You took a part-time job working as an assistant to the assistant for John Borick, who was the president, came in as president in 1997. I'd like to talk about the work environment at Liberty. Let's start with in the admissions office. What was that work environment like?
It definitely felt different than when I was a student. There was a little bit more freedom and it was a little more relaxed. I went to work after 4 years, spending 4 years and living in Lynchburg and, buying the Liberty Kool-Aid or whatever that looks like, you really, I loved my last few years. My brother was very involved. I was very involved. There's a lot of good people there. There's a lot of great students that are there, and believe in the ministry that it has. And I wanted to be part of that. I was working at a coffee shop that if you went to Liberty, everybody knows this coffee shop. I was managing it. And I just decided that, I wanted something more. I thought, I'll go recruit for them. And so I started working in admissions, and we were all really close. We all wanted the school to succeed. We wanted to go bring kids. I was put over some of the sports teams to go help with their, bringing those people in. And that was, I guess, the beginning of my sales career.
Well, and I have heard that Liberty has an amazing recruitment, that entire office. I know when my sister's kids were looking at different schools and they live on the East Coast, and she said, man, I can see why people go to Liberty. They know how to recruit potential families and students to their school. And they do an excellent job from what I understand. What about in Dr. Borek's office? What was the work culture like there?
So I started in admissions. I lived by myself, had my own apartment, and needed to make more. And so he had just come in, I believe in July of 97, was brought in under, with the recommendation of SACS, because Liberty was having some trouble with their accreditation. And
SACS stands for the
Southern Association of Colleges and Schools, I believe.
Okay. The accrediting organization that oversees Liberty. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And so they brought him in, and he had an assistant, and there was so much going on. She just needed help. So I thought, well, I'll work a few hours a week in Dr. Borek's office just to get additional income. I mean, I didn't have anything else to do, so I might as well work. So yeah, in that environment, it was very removed, very much more private. Obviously his office was private, and then Sharon's office next to his, and then I had a little office kind of back. You had to go through her office to get to my little cubby in the back. And it was, just typical secretary type tasks. But yes, that changed quickly.
As I understand it, you first experienced sexual harassment at Liberty at the hands of the President John Borek. Describe what began to happen and he began to do involving you that was crossing a line.
Yeah. It started with little kind of hints here and there and pushing the envelope to see how far you could go. But I think, growing up in the kind of environment we grew up in, is having a spiritual man of authority, especially over a place like Liberty, you just kind of pass it off as, oh, he's being inappropriate, but am I reading it wrong? Right? Am I?
Mm-hmm.
And
it's
then
always the woman's fault.
It's always,
right?
Always.
Right. Yeah. I've done a lot of reporting.
I remember him. Same story.
Same story. There's a patriarchal culture that, unfortunately, it is always the woman's fault. And so, it's familiar refrain.
And as they pushed the envelope to see how far you could go, it got to the point where he started calling me on my cell phone. I remember him. There's a road behind Liberty. I believe it's been changed now because of all the construction they've done, but there was a highway behind there that I would go to my apartment. And he would call me on that and tell me when he was behind me. I wouldn't even know he was behind me. And I would take different roads so he wouldn't know where I lived. And it was, I was starting to get pretty creeped out. I recall him inviting me to go hot tubbing at his condo in Forest, Virginia. his wife wasn't there yet. I guess she hadn't moved up there yet. But I remember him asking me to go hot tubbing with him. There was one instance I recall walking into his office and seeing a female colleague of ours sitting on his lap. And they wanted, they told me, come over here. And he proceeded to tell us how he wanted to buy us black cocktail dresses and fly with him on his Cessna to Washington, D.C. to go see the opera La Boheme. And he wanted to walk with us both on his each arm. So already I was starting to be like, I'm much younger than these people. What is happening? And so I had talked to a colleague of mine, a different colleague, told her that I was feeling really uncomfortable. I actually talked to this friend a couple weeks ago, and she reminded me of a situation where Dr. Bork had asked only me to go to see an on-campus play with him. It's again one of those things where, it's on campus, so it's in public, and he's not really meaning it. He's just not thinking, right? But I remember she said, do you remember you asked me to go with you because you felt uncomfortable? And she did. She went with us. So he was definitely crossing the lines. And I felt very, very uncomfortable, to say the least. It was, I don't have no idea how far he would have taken it, but it was gross.
Yeah. So in the Liberty Way that you gave me, when it talks about sexual harassment, it has a very well-defined way of, reporting. Did you have a similar type handbook for employees that told you if sexual harassment happens, this is how you report it? Was there actual training where they talked about, like I know today, it's very common that you would go through some sort of training when you enter a workplace about sexual harassment, how to report it, what's appropriate, what isn't appropriate. Did any of those things happen at Liberty that you recall?
No, I don't recall anything different either. I believe we were all supposed to just follow the Liberty Way, because it says in there, I have a copy of it right here, something about faculty and staff, and we were all supposed to follow this code of conduct. That was the expectation.
So here you've got the president of the school crossing lines, and you're at the bottom of the totem pole. I mean, as far as authority goes in the work environment. Did you feel like you could go to human resources or report to somebody, or did you feel just kind of powerless at that point?
I didn't even know who or where human resources was. To be honest, I couldn't tell you where they were. So I didn't know. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know. That's why I talked to my colleague. Who do you tell? Here you've got the president of the university who's brought in to make sure Liberty keeps its accreditation. Like, where do I go from here?
Yeah. I remember being in a work environment, early 90s, and I look back and I'm like, that was so sexual harassment. One, I was so naive, coming from a Christian home, very sheltered, never had anybody do anything like that to me. And I just froze. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what I was supposed to do. I look back and I'm like, oh man, I should have reported that immediately to HR. I would know now, this is what
Absolutely.
you do. But at that point I didn't know, and there wasn't training on it. And again, I wasn't used to bucking somebody who was higher. It wasn't my boss, but somebody higher in rank than I was at work. And so that was difficult for me. But I just look back and again, I know what it's like to kind of go, I don't know what to do. My understanding for you eventually went and talked to your boss, who was Jay Spencer. And what was that conversation like, and how did he receive the information you gave him?
Yeah. Well, first I want to say, we're not too far away from age gap, and you and I, and we weren't raised to push back against any kind of male and spiritual authority. If I had a daughter, I would raise her very different than that. I can tell you that. but there was a reverence there. There was a, oh, God put him there. He's a man of God. He would never do anything like that. And so not only not reporting it, but just for us to even think like that, we would have been, because of the thinking at that time, there would have been a shame put on us. How could you think like that? You're thinking, So when I did report it to Jay, I was told that he would take care of it, not to say anything.
Keep it quiet.
Mm-hmm.
That is the way. And believe me, I worked at Moody, and I understand the cone of silence that you are expected to keep, at least from not speaking outside of the institution. I didn't feel it as much, I think, as you did within the institution. But Jay, said he was going to protect you. And I'm guessing that feels pretty good at that stage, to feel like this man is going to step in and make sure that President Boric doesn't cross any boundaries. And I'm curious, after that point, did it stop?
Kind of what happened in those dynamics is he almost came in as this stepping in when he would see Dr. Boric around me, or, if I was working in my office, constantly coming to check on me. He set up a private email account so that he could email me when I was working there and he was working in his office, or he would stay later to make sure that I was being protected, kind of to come in as I want you to know that, nothing's going to happen because I'm here. And Jay had been there for a very long time, and he was very close with Dr. Boric and, Dr. Falwell and people on the board. Like, he was very much more connected at that point than Dr. Boric was, because he had history. And so I think there was an automatic trust of, well, this is a good guy. Like, he is watching out for me. And he does want to make sure that I'm protected in this situation. It went to the point that sometime in the spring of 98, or maybe like January-ish, he went to see if all the admissions counselors could get raises so that I could actually quit working in Dr. Boric's office. And we did get raises, and I did quit working in there. So yes, it did stop, but he pushed for that specifically. This was the factor that made him do that. So I started thinking, I look back on it now and think, was that just a weird jealousy that he wanted to get me? I don't know. It's kind of a bizarre way to get me out of there. So then I was separated from Dr. Boric on the, as far as working for him. I didn't work for him anymore. Still had to interact with him, but I was very careful.
Yeah. But it also gave Jay Spencer a special place in your life and access to you without any kind of oversight, like a private email. Some of these things now, I'm guessing you look at it a little bit differently. Rather than protection, you're looking at this as grooming. Am I right?
Oh, absolutely. I look at it now and it's textbook grooming. It literally opened the door for him to do something that, according to Dr. Falwell, he had been, Dr. Falwell was aware of him doing this before myself.
Dr. Falwell told you that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When later, not at this point, but later after it came out, he told you that Jay Spencer had done this before, and was allowed to stay at the school.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And it literally opened the door for him to groom me. The relationship was poised to me as a protection, and now I feel like you're my little sister. I feel like, we have this sibling relationship. I was invited to his home for dinner. I recall, I met all his kids. It was a, special relationship now. Like, I'm protecting you. And now we've gone to this, we're family kind of situation.
And little sister, he was more like your father, wasn't he?
He was
how much older?
In his 40. He's probably
Yeah.
close to 20 years older.
So almost twice your age.
Mm-hmm.
And he's really not your big brother. He's more like your father.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Protecting me, right? Under this whole umbrella of protection. So you do, I mean, it's a very twisted in your head figuring out what's happening. And at the same time, I was there, I had friends there, but I didn't have any family there. And so I thought, well, he's protecting me here and I'm, getting close.
Yeah. And I would think that would feel good, and getting to know a family. And sometimes when you're away from home, it's just fun to be in a family's home.
Sure.
And I get that. When did it begin to start crossing a line? And how did those lines begin to get blurred?
Around the time where, I was being fed that I was like his little sister, it started, I don't recall if it was through email, but there was definitely a change. And one night, I was working late. He was working late protecting me. And he came over into my little office aside from Dr. Borak, the one in Dr. Borak's office, and physically moved to kiss me on campus in the office.
And how did you respond to that?
It was very confusing, for one.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how do you respond? I think back on it now, and I wish I could tell that girl what was going on. But I remember being very confused at this point. How do you go from being siblings and feeling like you're close to someone, and now he has these feelings for me? It was very surprising to me. There's a weird dynamic that's hard to explain when you feel obligated to someone for protecting you. There's a lot of emotions that go in with it. And now what do I do with this? Right? How do I figure this out? I had no one to tell. I couldn't tell anyone. For one, what are they going to think of me? What did I do to put myself in this situation? No one's ever going to believe this story. And from that point, there was some I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. But it didn't stop.
So he kept pushing those boundaries, kept making sexual advances. It eventually got to the point where he took you on a trip with him.
Yeah, he had a conference, some kind of Christian education conference in Las Vegas. And, I remember him begging me to go, and I know I did not want to go on that trip. There were, I hate to even call it a relationship because I don't know what the word is for it, but this situation is going on, but yet pushing it to this boundary that I was at that point physically sick, wanting to get out of it, but I couldn't. I was in Virginia by myself. This would have been in the spring sometime that he asked me to go to Las Vegas with him. And I remember I pushed back hard. I was scared because I didn't want to get caught either in this situation. I mean, this is, horrible. Like there was such an element of control along with it that I had lost all power. I really did.
And that is something that I hear so often from women who are caught in this kind of power differential, where they feel like they lose agency at some point. And can you put your finger on like when you felt like you lost agency, or did you feel that like from the very beginning, like you just didn't have a choice, you couldn't say no?
The control is so heavy when you're in that because they've already emotionally got you wrapped up into it, no matter how they did it. For my situation, it's under protection. I'm going to protect you from this perverted man who's hitting on you, this old man who's, asking you to do, and I'm going to protect you from that. And so it's just this slow, drip drop of, it's like getting a fish on a hook, right? I'm just going to slowly reel you in, but it's going to look different. It's going to look like, we're siblings. I'm going to make it, and by the time it hits you upside the head, it's almost like you lose your mind. You lose something because you're now so controlled. I mean, the element of control is weird in that situation. I don't know how to describe it, but you don't feel like you have power. I would agree with that.
Well, and you told me when you went to that Las Vegas trip, you were throwing up.
Oh, yeah.
Is that right?
I threw up a lot because I knew I wanted out of it. And how do I get out of it? I didn't have the money to move back home. Nobody, it's Liberty, for Pete's sake. Who's going to believe this? Who's going to, I'm just an admissions counselor.
And what kind of work history would you get if you left, if you offended this person who was your boss, who would write your recommendation for your next job, which used to be a thing. I mean, nowadays it's like every employer is afraid to say how you were at the last job for fear they'd be sued. But back then, that was everything. Getting a good recommendation for your next job was really, really huge. Today, we understand that when there's a huge power differential between someone like a boss, and I don't know, was there a spiritual component to this? I mean, did you see him as a spiritual authority? Did he try to justify it like spiritually, or was it just more of him being your boss and your overseer?
Going back to how was it working there different than being a student there? That's how working there was different. When you're a student there, you did chapel 3 times a week. We did church 3 times, Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday night. The spiritual side working there was not the same, I would say, for sure. We didn't have to do any of that anymore. I remember thinking that was a little bit different. You would think we would have had devotions or something like that. Nothing like that. No.
Interesting. And did people talk about their faith? I mean, was that something Jay talked to you about?
Jay was so involved in Thomas Road Baptist Church and teaching young marrieds and how to have a great marriage. And
oh, are you serious?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. That no, it wasn't. I don't think when we worked there it was. I think at that point it was just assumed we're all adults, so you're all on your own for your spiritual journey. I don't feel like it was ever even. I could have been working at the University of Montana and it wouldn't have been much different except that we had to wear dresses.
Wow. That's sad. Christian environments should be communities, should be.
That was my experience. Yeah, that was my.
Sure. Well, it's not unlike others I've spoken to at Liberty, for sure. Although I have spoken to people that had close relationships with other faculty, and there, as you mentioned, there are some great people at Liberty. Unfortunately, I haven't spoken to anybody that found much of that in the administration. But the further down you get,
it's the same people.
Yeah,
that's why.
So yeah, I mean, sad that was the case. So at one point, you decided you are going to get out, and you just sounds like you just kind of made a break and drove back home. I mean, am I understanding that correctly?
Well, in the summer of 98, I knew I had to get out of there because I couldn't get away from the situation. I knew I had to move back home. I didn't want to move back home. I wanted to stay there, but I knew in order to get out of it. And so I went home for a vacation. This was June, I think, beginning of July. I believe June. And I actually flew my cat back with me because I didn't want to drive my cat across the country. And so I knew, and I had told people that I work with that after the students came back for that in the fall for the next year that I was moving back home. So I had put things in place to get out. And Jay knew that too.
So you were trying to make a break. And my understanding is you came back that August. So you've got the Las Vegas trip in the spring. June, you decide to basically get out of Lynchburg, take your cat. Your stuff's still back in your apartment.
Yeah, I only went home for just a vacation. So I came back to work the rest of like July and August until my students that I had recruited came for their fall semester.
Gotcha. So the cat is back with your parents in Washington. Okay. So then in August, you're there to receive these students that you have recruited, to see them. And then the plan is you were going to leave.
I was out. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And talk about what happened when everything came to light.
Yeah. So I was planning on moving back to Washington after the students came in August, and his wife hired a private investigator and discovered the situation that was going on between Jay and I. And I went home. I was home when she found out. Someone had come to my door, was banging on my door. And I just hid in my closet because I didn't know what was happening. All I knew is everyone knew. That was all I knew. And I hid in my closet until it got dark. And I just packed my car and drove home.
When you say everyone knew, how did you discover?
I feel like everyone knew, because I knew she knew. Jay had told me he told me that she knew, and I had gotten calls from Dr. Falwell.
What transpired in those calls with Dr. Falwell?
Yeah, he actually called me a few times on my way home. I recall him saying very vividly, like, that he had been through this before with Jay, and that he would take care of Jay and make sure he's taken care of.
So this seems to be the pattern. Dr. Boric does something wrong, Jay will take care of it. Jay does something wrong, Dr. Falwell will take care of it. At no point is HR involved. At no point is there an investigation, or is there any kind of, let's get to the bottom of this. It's just hush, hush, we'll take care of it. Let's brush it under the rug, right? That's the MO. And how are you doing your emotional and mental state during all of this?
Oh, I remember driving home and opening my car door to puke out the door. Like, I was scared. I didn't know where I was going. I just literally packed my stuff and got in my car and took off with my big map. I had no plan of how I was to get there. On top of that, I was reeling emotionally. I didn't even know what my emotions were. But I would say my biggest one was fear, because I didn't know what was happening. There were a lot of emotions, but fear was the main one. And I remember even then not knowing what we know now, being mad when he said, "I've been through this before." I remember thinking, then why are we doing it again? Why is he here?
So they allowed a sexual predator to remain. Somebody who had done this before, who preys on women half his age, probably, I don't know who that other person was, but...
I do.
An employee?
Mm-hmm.
Under him?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Absolute sexual misconduct. He should have been fired back then. But this is a pattern, and who knows how many other women he's done this to since. I mean, it didn't stop the first time, didn't stop the second time. Who knows how many others. So you're driving out, and my understanding, you had a conversation with Jerry Falwell Sr. again while you're on the road, driving to Washington State.
Yeah, he told me that he would pack up my apartment and have it shipped out, that he would take care of all of it. And I look back at it now and think that was to get me to hush up, go away, drive across the country, and be quiet, little girl. Like, that's what it was. But I'll take care of it on this side. We'll take care of him. We'll make sure he and his family are okay. And at that point, you do. Like, here I'm worried, oh yeah, what about his family? What about his kids? What about, like, he needs, that dynamic skews your thinking. And because you've already had to forget who you are at your core.
And he communicated to you that Jay would be taken care of. Am I right? And
he was.
Talk about that.
He was repositioned. They fired him from Liberty, but he was repositioned over the American Association of Christian Counselors, given a severance package of 6 figures. I believe it was $100,000. And then they rehired him back 8 years later.
So when you say repositioned, I mean, I understand Tim Clinton at this point was the executive director of the American Association of Christian Counselors. He's now the president of it. He's now a Liberty trustee, and he's also the head of the Liberty University Global Center for Mental Health, Addiction, and Recovery. So he has been given a lot from Liberty. Was he, how did Jerry Falwell Sr. reposition somebody who's fired for sexual misconduct to the American Association of Christian Counselors? How does that work? What was your understanding?
My understanding is that I thought that it was an affiliate of Liberty, but I don't think it is. My understanding is that they just share leadership. And so my understanding is that they literally opened up a job for him so that he would have a job.
And we don't know who was involved in that. I don't know, but I'll just say Tim Clinton, who was very well connected at both organizations. It certainly is interesting to begin to note these things, but it's also understanding how this system works. I've talked about this evangelical industrial complex or celebrity machine or whatever you want to call it, but there are so many financial incentives between all of the Christian ministries and organizations, and it should, if it works properly, it would work to ensure that there's accountability between them. And when somebody like this is fired, it should be like, this guy is no good. Don't hire him, right? That's how this should work. And instead, we'll take care of you, Jay. We'll just move you quietly. We'll put somebody who has been involved in sexual misconduct now twice at our institution and put him in another Christian institution. And then, as you said, bring him back in 2007. Liberty rehires Jay Spencer as a dean, again with access to students, access to employees. Then he becomes the associate provost of, I think, online learning. Did you find out about this in 2000, like in real time, or when did you find out that they had rehired the man that you believe groomed you and sexually harassed you? And I think, this isn't, I deal a lot with adult clergy sexual abuse. A lot of, obviously he wasn't a clergy, but he's at a Christian institution. He's twice your age. He's your boss. So unethical on so many different counts. And there's no level playing field as far as the power that's involved there. And yet, most often, and I know we're going to get people saying, well, she had an affair with him and now she's just trying to to rationalize it. I mean, that's what some of the Christian community says, and no understanding of how a woman in your position felt.
And they covered it up. So back to when did I find out? I didn't start looking because I did vault it. I didn't start looking. I did a little digging when in 2021 with Jerry Jr. and that whole, scandal. But in 2023, that's when I started looking, and that's when I found out 23, 24 that they had rehired him, and I was really mad. Not just mad, I was hurt, but it also gave me I would say the anger enough to be, no, this has to stop. How could they let him back? And what my mind goes to, what do they all have on each other that they all cover for each other? Why would they bring him back? Jerry Jr. wrote an article. There's an article that came out in 2023 where he names a bunch of these people. And there are bullet points in there where he doesn't name a few people. I'm pretty sure my situation is in a couple of those bullet points. So
I remember. Yeah.
They know this, and they continue to cover it up. And people can say and will say what they want, but when you're in that situation and don't understand what it's like to be groomed by someone, they know what they are doing every step of the way to get you into the point of being vulnerable for you to do what they want you to do.
Again, when Jerry Falwell talked about this, Jerry Falwell Jr., he was saying it kind of in the context of, hey, you're coming after me for this sex scandal that I was involved in. This has been going on for decades, and everybody looks the other way. So why me?
Yeah.
Why me? And why is the board coming after me? They've known about this. And he specifically said sexual harassment with a former president and an administrator, as I recall. And so he named this. He didn't give their names, but it seems like a vague reference to what happened to you. But of course, Jerry Falwell Jr. was general counsel in 1998 and 99. And so in 1998, as the years come to close, 99, you begin to realize they're not even going to make good on this promise to ship your stuff, pay to have your stuff shipped out. So my understanding, it's like in a truck somewhere waiting to come back to you. You're without your belongings this whole time. And what happens? I mean, Jerry Falwell just goes radio silent on you?
Yeah, but that's what happened. He had said he would have my belongings shipped back to my home. He had them packed up, and then at some point within 1 to 2 weeks after I had left Lynchburg, he went silent on me. And now my stuff is sitting in a moving truck in Lynchburg. It was just my belongings. It was my home. It was sitting in a truck, and nobody was going to do anything about it. And so my parents responded very differently than I would. But yeah, I had to hire an attorney. That was basically what I was told. If you want your stuff, you need to hire an attorney.
Okay, so Jay Spencer gets a 6-figure severance. He gets repositioned, as it was described to you, to the American Association of Christian Counselors. You can't even get them to pay for your stuff, let alone give you a new job. And they just cut you off. The double standard here is shocking, absolutely shocking. And especially if there was more culpability by far. I mean, even if he hadn't groomed you in the ways that you described, it's just, I mean, the man was your boss and he got involved. I mean, it's even without knowing all the details, there should have been more culpability, way more for him than for you. And yet Liberty treated you like just a piece of garbage they wanted to get rid of. I mean, it sounds like.
Yeah. Yep.
And how did that make you feel? I mean, how does that affect you as a human being to be treated like that?
Well, I'm across the country at this point, and in my head, all my friends that I went to college with, in my head, the whole world knows about this. I don't know if they did or not. I just felt like that. I felt like I had a scarlet letter on me for years, even though I was, on the other side of the country, which is another reason why I blocked it out, because you can't, how do you face that? I shut my friends out. I shut that world out. So I'm trying to pick up the pieces, but I don't even know how. I don't even know how to survive this. When we went to mediation, I had to sit across from them that February. Jerry Jr. was
Describe
their legal
everyone.
counsel.
Yeah,
Oh.
everyone that was in that room for this mediation. Again, this is like a few months after we're in 1999 at this point, right?
This is February of 99. So I left Lynchburg in August, and a few weeks later is when that week they said they would ship my stuff out. He tells me on my way home, and then not long after that, stuff's cut off. So I had to hire this attorney. We go to mediation in February of 99. It was in Richmond, Virginia. By this point, I weighed 91 pounds, and my family and my attorney were because I wasn't eating, I was puking, I was not in a good place. But I remember walking in, it was my dad and my attorney and myself, and the judge looked at us as we were walking in, and I'll never forget. He said, "You do know you're going against the good old boys, right?" And I was like, I don't even know what that means. I'm from Washington. We don't do the good old boy thing. I mean, they do. It's different. It's very different. And I had to sit in front of them for what felt like an eternity until we went off to our separate rooms. And that was one of the worst situations of my life, because I felt like these four men, instead of caring how I felt, all they cared about was covering it up and making me feel like it was my fault.
So even with Jay Spencer in the room, he didn't own what he had done to you? He didn't own
anything.
He didn't say anything.
Neither of them did.
But he didn't own, and it was kind of like he was on Liberty's side. They were protecting him.
Oh, absolutely.
So I reached out to Jay Spencer for comment. Again, he's now the Associate Provost for Online and Digital Learning at Houston Christian University. He replied in an email saying, quote, "Thank you for the opportunity to provide a response. This matter was formally addressed and mediated nearly 27 years ago, and I have had no contact with Ms. Beck since then. It is regrettable that she now feels compelled to revisit such a difficult chapter from our past, and I sincerely hope she is able to find the closure and peace that she seeks. By the grace, mercy, and forgiveness of God, I have devoted these past decades attempting to rebuild my life and career, seeking to walk humbly within the consequences of the situation. I remain steadfast in my trust in His redemption and healing, and I have no further comment to offer regarding this matter." Okay, so that's what Jay Spencer has to say about what happened 27 years ago. But from my understanding, from 1999 until now, you have not been able to talk about anything that happened because you had to sign an NDA as part of the settlement. And I asked, how did they present that NDA to you?
At that point, to get my stuff back, I had to hire the attorney, which I couldn't afford. And so I was in this position of, well, I have to sign it because I have to pay her. I was 24, and people say, well, you're an adult. Yep, I was an adult. But we didn't even talk about this stuff. I look back on it now, and if I could have told that girl, be brave, have your voice, be strong. My attorney told me, she said, you wouldn't have been able to handle it if we wouldn't have signed it. She was worried that I would survive.
Yeah. And that is a real fear. I mean, I have talked to a number of women who have been in that position and suicidal. And safety, your safety is the number one priority in those kinds of situations. But I am so glad that you have regained your voice and that you're speaking now. And you're 52, which is the average age that victims, I know, of childhood sexual abuse, they don't talk till their 50s. I mean, it takes so long to get over, think about that, being a child and being sexually abused, and yet you still feel like it's your fault, half of them. I mean, it takes so many years to get perspective. And now you look back on your 20-something self and you say, that was ridiculous. Like what I went through, that was wrong. But when you're in the moment in that time, it's very, very, very difficult to do.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about who's responsible for what
Me
happened.
too.
Yeah, I know you do. So you've got in the room the men that covered this up and that were a part of this agreement. Jerry Falwell Jr., he was a general counsel. John Borick, who was the man who you say sexually harassed you and crossed lines himself at Liberty University. Jay Spencer, the man who you say groomed you and sexually harassed you. You did have your dad. Did you feel like your dad was protecting you at that point?
As best as he could.
Yeah.
As best as he could.
You said your parents had a little different perspective on this than you did.
Yeah. Yeah, I grew up, I kind of said that in the beginning, and there's an element of, we've learned so much in the last 25 years. There was an element of shame put on me by my family, for sure. And that was hard because I was responsible for paying for my own counseling. And that first counselor I went with, my dad picked, my parents picked, and I just quit because it did not help. It made things worse, to be honest. And I don't know if they would. My dad's passed away. I would think he would have handled it very different now, especially the track record that Liberty has.
Yeah, and I think that's helped a lot of people understand some of these situations. And I know from my experience, even how I would have viewed this 10 years ago to how I view it now, totally different understanding, having interviewed so many women in your situation.
And it's hard for my mind to work through some of that. It is. You've got to work through a lot of your messed up upbringing to figure this out.
Sure. And I mean, I always feel like when I'm looking from my perspective, looking in, it's not my part to judge these things because I have not walked in those shoes, but I can imagine walking in those shoes and what that would be like. And so I wish the rest, and I hope that there are people listening right now who maybe have been very judgmental of women in this situation can hear and learn how powerless you feel when you have someone like that over you doing what he did. But again, we know just because they were in the room when this agreement was signed, Jerry Jr. knew. He's been pretty discredited, so that's not as important a point. But John Borick is still a trustee at Liberty University. In fact, he is president emeritus, and emeritus is an honorary position that Liberty gave him. And I'm curious, did you ever, other than Jay Spencer, did you ever tell anybody else? Did they know what happened with John Borick?
Yes, the colleague that went to the play with me, she knew. Mm-hmm.
She knew. Do you think anybody in positions of authority knew?
I don't know.
Jerry Jr. knew, it seems. Did that come up at all?
Well, I don't know if when Jerry Jr. found out. He might have found out when it all blew up.
Jerry Jr., you were saying, he mentioned, he had this reference when he was complaining about him being held accountable for his behavior, he mentioned that there was a president who had sexually harassed someone, a former president at Liberty, which seems to be an indication that he knew about President Boric.
I think the whole board ended up knowing about Dr. Boric once it came out.
But here's the crazy thing, is that the board of Liberty University, who, I mean, it's hard to imagine. I mean, this is a vice president, Jay Spencer, who gets removed from the school. You say you feel like everybody knew. Certainly, they would have to talk about to the board why a vice president gets fired from the school, especially if they're giving him a severance of $100,000. So the board in 1998, you can't imagine that they wouldn't have known, which means that they would have been tacitly responsible for this cover up as well. And so when we look at the board in 1998, I just want to go down, and thanks to you, you found a list, thank you very much, of everybody who was on the board in 1998. So I'd like to just bring attention to several of them. I can't bring attention to all of them because there's over 30 members on the board, and I've learned that is one way to keep the board from really sometimes knowing what's going on because it gets so large. But again, over 30 people on this board, and some of them, it's a little shocking now when you say you look back. Some of these men have been involved in some pretty shameful things. So let me just tell you who was on the board. So we have Jerry Vines, who is the former pastor of First Baptist Church of Jacksonville, Florida. At the time, 1998, it was the third largest church in the SBC. And if you know anything about Jerry Vines, he was also involved in another alleged sex abuse cover-up involving a convicted sex abuser, Daryl Gilliard, in the 1980s and 1990s. So that would have been pretty much at the same time this is happening. He was involved with this Daryl Gilliard. Dr. John Boric, who we've already talked about, he was on the board. Somebody else, Neil Askew, was then Liberty University Executive Vice President. Jonathan Falwell, at this time, he was the executive pastor at Thomas Road Baptist Church, which is the church that Jerry Falwell Sr. founded and was a senior pastor of. In 2007, when Sr. died, Jonathan took over as a senior pastor at Thomas Road Baptist Church. Now, since his brother, Jerry Falwell Jr., was disgraced and resigned as president at Liberty University, he's become the chancellor at Liberty University. He went from a salary around $200,000. He is now receiving over $823,000 a year. And this is a part-time job, is my understanding, as chancellor.
Yeah, that's my understanding too.
His full-time job is at Thomas Road Baptist Church. I don't know how much they're paying him, but how does he get over $823,000 as a chancellor of the school, which is, again, a part-time job?
Liberty's nonprofit.
Well,
nonprofit.
Ostensibly, but somebody's profiting.
Yeah.
Ronnie Floyd, who was then the pastor at Cross Church, a mega church in Arkansas, he became the CEO of the SBC Executive Committee, resigned in 2020 amid the SBC sex abuse scandal. This is honestly like a list of the
bad Hall of Fame.
Yeah, the bad Hall of Fame. Infamous Hall of Fame, maybe.
Yeah.
Let's see, Freddie Gage, SBC evangelist who's now deceased. Jack Graham, pastor of the SBC megachurch, Prestonwood Baptist Church, founder of PowerPoint Ministries. He was on the board then. Johnny Hunt, here's another one, now disgraced former SBC president and senior pastor of First Baptist Church in Woodstock, Georgia, accused of sexually assaulting the wife of an SBC pastor in 2010. Gene Mims is pastor of The Gathering in Nashville, Tennessee, also catalyst of the Liberty Church Network Lead Center in Nashville. And I will tell you why some of these trustees I'm highlighting is because they are currently trustees at Liberty University. Jerry Prevost, Alaska pastor who served for decades as the chairman of Liberty's board, served as president of Liberty University from 2020, which is when Jerry Falwell Jr. resigned, to 2023 when Don D. Costin took over. He's now president emeritus, and get this, as president emeritus of a school. I don't even know that involves, I don't even know what that involves
anything.
doing.
Yeah.
He received $784,000 in 2024 as president emeritus of the school. Unbelievable. One guy, Jack Dinspear, I'd never heard of before. I looked him up, now deceased pastor of University Baptist Church in Jacksonville, Florida. He apparently was the spiritual mentor for Jerry Falwell Sr. when he was a new believer. John Heath, retired businessman from Roanoke, Virginia, still serving on the board. Beverly LaHaye, everybody knows Beverly, right? Tim LaHaye's wife, a very well-known woman in Christian circles, very author, very prominent. Richard Lee, a pastor from Cummings, Georgia, still on the board at Liberty University. Aaron Manley, David Rodeheiser, pastor of Calvary Road Baptist Church in Alexandria, Virginia. He's still on the board. Don Crane, retired pastor from Mechanicsville, Virginia. He's still on the board.
The Rodenheiser, I believe his son is on the board now as well. And I went to Liberty at the same, I knew his son.
You knew his son?
Mm-hmm. Mark DeMoss is the next
Mark DeMoss. So that's a name people may or may not recognize. Anybody who's in media recognizes it because Mark DeMoss he's really thought of as a PR guru. This man has represented some of the pastors and the most high-profile Christian leaders embroiled in scandals in evangelicalism. He represented Ravi Zacharias, for example, Bill Hybels, Gospel for Asia, which has a over $30 million settlement with past donors for fraud. Mark DeMoss has been a huge mover and shaker in evangelicalism, in PR. Interestingly, he resigned from the board of trustees when Jerry Jr. supported Donald Trump.
Yeah.
That was a bridge too far for him. Tim Lee, evangelist from Texas, who now serves as a chairman of Liberty's board. So the chairman of Liberty's board right now was on the board in 1998 when all of this happened. Alan McFarland, a pastor from Chesapeake, Virginia, he was on the board. A couple others that are still on the board today: Dwight Reigard, pastor of Piedmont Church in Georgia; Jeffrey Yeager, businessman from Fort Mill, South Carolina. So just to reiterate, the trustees that are still on the board who were there in 1998: Jerry Vines, Dr. John Borek, Jonathan Falwell, who not only is still on the board, but now is the chancellor of Liberty University, Jack Graham, Gene Mims, Jerry Prevost, John Heath, Richard Lee, David Rodenheiser, Don Crane, Tim Lee, Alan McFarland, Dwight Reigard, Jeffrey Yeager. These men are still serving on the board at Liberty University. They were there in 1998. Now, I spoke with one of the trustees, Dwight Reigard, on the phone, and I asked him if he knew what happened to Jay Spencer in 1998. And he told me that he didn't know who Jay Spencer was, which was really surprising. Jay served as the VP of Enrollment Management from 1993 to 1998, and after being fired, Spencer then again returned to Liberty and worked there from 2007 to 2017, first as an academic dean, but then as the vice provost of Liberty's online academy. And Reigard said to me, "I'm really embarrassed that I don't know who this man is, because it sounds like I should know who he is, but I just don't." So then I asked Reigard if it would be unusual for a VP to be fired, given a six-figure severance, and then for the school to go through mediation with a victim of sexual harassment that ended with a settlement without the board even knowing about it. And he said that some personnel matters were so sensitive that they were handled only by the executive committee. But he believed the executive committee would have known about it for sure. So I've asked Liberty for confirmation of who served on the executive committee in 1998, but the school didn't give me an answer. But for sure, the executive committee would have included Jerry Falwell Sr., who was chancellor of the school at the time, Jerry Vines, who was chairman of the board. And by the way, I reached out to Jerry Vines for comment, but he didn't respond to me. The committee also would have included John Borek, Liberty president at the time. Again, now he's president emeritus, and he serves on the trustee board. And then insiders tell me that two others would have likely been on the executive committee. Liberty Executive Vice President Neil Askew, who left Liberty in 2020, and Mark DeMoss, who resigned from Liberty's board in 2016. Now, I contacted Mark DeMoss, who confirmed he first joined Liberty's board in 1991. He said he can't remember when he joined the executive committee, but he said he's never heard of the name Rachel Beck. He doesn't recall her case or her complaint. He also said that he wasn't aware of a settlement or severance deal for Jay Spencer. However, Mark said he does remember allegations against John Borek, but said that Borek, and I quote, was relieved of his post at that time. Now that's interesting because John Borek served as Liberty's president until 2004. So it doesn't seem like he was relieved of his post in 1998 or 99, and he resigned in 2004. He wasn't fired. In fact, the school gave him the title of president emeritus, and he still serves on Liberty's board of trustees. And he's been back to speak at Liberty. This is him speaking at Liberty in 2017 for its biannual Global Focus Week. It really makes you wonder what's going on at the school when a former executive committee member like Mark DeMoss seems well aware of Borek's alleged sexual harassment, yet Borek remains in his position at Liberty University. But I did get a statement from a Liberty University spokesperson, which I'm going to read in its entirety. And it says, quote, current Liberty University leadership has reviewed documentation from more than 25 years ago and is grieved by the personal pain Rachel Beck has endured. Interviews and documents from that time show that the late Chancellor Jerry Falwell Sr. offered concern and support for her well-being multiple times. More recently, Chancellor Jonathan Falwell favorably responded when she reached out requesting a meeting with him. I'm just going to pause right there on this statement because at the beginning, it says that current Liberty University leadership has reviewed documentation. It's my understanding that you reached out to them through your lawyer and asked multiple times for documentation. And to this point, have they produced anything?
No, they've said they're not. Basically, they're not going to look for it.
They're not going to look for it. So this says
they've admitted that they are aware and that there is a document. Clearly, current Liberty University leadership has reviewed it. So they have it in front of them.
And they have not sent you even your settlement statement and all of that documentation. That's never been sent to you.
No.
Okay.
Originally, I did have a copy. We talked about that. But I destroyed it a long time ago.
Okay.
Because I couldn't have the thought of their signatures even in my home was hard. I don't even know the verbiage for it. It just disgusted me, to be honest.
And then they say that Jerry Falwell Sr. offered concern and support. My understanding from our conversation so far is that Jerry Falwell Sr. did offer concern and support, but then that support evaporated. Like he ghosted you once all of your belongings were in a truck and you reached out to him. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes. To say he reached out multiple times might be a far-fetched. I wasn't counting. It was a couple on my drive home. By the time I arrived home, that communication was no longer. He had told me he would pack up my belongings and have them shipped. And then at some point, it just, no communication whatsoever. So my belongings sat in the truck until I was told how much it cost to have them shipped. And that if I wanted them, I'd have to have them shipped. It was $6,000 at that point.
And so that's one of the reasons you went into mediation, was
Correct.
to get your belongings back that Jerry Falwell Sr. had told you they would pay for.
Mm-hmm. Because now they're packed up in a truck. If I don't get them, somebody's just going to throw them away.
So Jonathan Falwell is mentioned here, says favorably responded when you reached out for a meeting with him. What happened with Jonathan Falwell?
So after I was contacted by the media in 2023, I sent him an email, and I asked if he remembered my situation, and I just said I'd like to talk with him, and received an email back that said basically I vaguely remember the details, but he confirmed he remembered it, and that he was open to talking to me from a pastoral stance, or he mentioned the word pastoral position. And so we set up a meeting on a Friday. I responded trying to get the details of that meeting and never heard back from him again.
So he ghosted you just like his dad did.
Exactly.
And this is concern. This is pastoral.
Right. Right. I had told him up to this point I had followed what I knew to be my NDA, which I didn't have, but I still kept quiet, didn't say anything. But I wanted to talk to somebody. I wanted, here I know this investigation's going on. Like, can someone just talk to me? And I followed up with an email finally to him just saying, I understand that the attorneys probably got to you like they did your father and you're not willing or can't speak to me. But I'll let you know that, at some point, and I listed all the names of, Jerry Vines, Jerry Prevost, Jonathan Falwell, Jerry Jr., Jay Spencer, John Borick. I listed these men, and I said, someday you guys are going to have to stand in front of God and be accountable for everything that you've covered up. And all these survivors that are out there still trying to survive.
Yeah. Well, and I had a similar situation with Jonathan Falwell with another Jane Doe, a more recent Jane Doe, and she actually met with him, and it was her understanding that he said that she's going to have a seat at the table when there's an investigation, and same thing happened. No response, nothing ever happened. The investigation came and went. She was never contacted. So again, this is care and concern of a pastor, because Jonathan Falwell, in addition to being a chancellor at the school, is the senior pastor now of the church his father started, Thomas Road Baptist Church. So he's a senior pastor, and this is how he treats victims. I also want to mention something else about Jonathan Falwell. Here's a picture of Jonathan seated at the inauguration ceremony of Bluefield University's new president, Dr. Stephen Peterson, on October 16, 2024. And as you can clearly see, that's Jay Spencer at the podium speaking. So he spoke at this inauguration ceremony. And there's Jonathan with the red hair. He was on the board in 1998 and 99 when everything came out about Jay Spencer. Even if he claimed ignorance again about that nearly 30 years ago, you talked to him in 2023, which would have been the year before. And here he is, just grinning his support while Spencer is speaking at the podium at this school in 2024. Here's another picture taken at the same inauguration. It wasn't during the ceremony, but obviously before or after it. It was posted up on social media. And here you have not only Jonathan Falwell and Stephen Peterson and Jay Spencer, but also Liberty University president Dondi Costin. And look, it's like all one big happy family. Now, does Dondi not know about Jay Spencer? He's right there with his chancellor, Jonathan Falwell, who had been contacted by you the year before. Does he not know? I mean, when you see a picture like this, what do you think? I mean, how does that make you feel?
Well, every time I've seen pictures of, people have sent me, or the group of the good old boys getting together, that's my immediate thought is it's the good old boys. They still cover for each other. There hasn't been change because they're all still patting each other on the back and cheering them on. I mean, when you stand behind someone at a podium, you are showing support for that person. You are on their team, you're backing them up. And it says a lot.
Mm-hmm. Sure does. Well, I'm going to keep reading Liberty's statement.
Well, I wanted to add to, just from my personal, in that first sentence, is grieved. He says, is grieved by the personal pain, Rachel. And then he says, he doesn't even spell my name right. So they were so overwhelmed with grief that even though my name's in the subject line, they can't even spell it right. So
yeah, we took out, we're using your maiden name, Beck. They used your married name, so we took that out. But yes, they did misspell your married name in the document that we got from them.
Yeah, probably their grief.
Yeah, I mean, it does kind of add insult to injury, right?
Yeah.
When you see something like that. Well, I'm going to continue reading the rest of Liberty's statement. The allegations against Jay Spencer and John Borick were fully addressed through an investigation, mediation, and a settlement agreement that was executed more than 25 years ago. Based on Spencer's confession, the conflicting response from Borick, as well as other information from that time, the university asked Spencer to resign and felt it appropriate for President Borick to continue in his role. So, Rachel, it seems like what Liberty is saying is that Spencer confessed, but Borick didn't. And so they kept Borick on. But to your knowledge, was there ever an investigation concerning your allegations against Dr. Borick? I mean, were you interviewed by a school representative or a lawyer or anything about the sexual harassment that you say Dr. Borick committed against you?
Never. I was never contacted by anyone from the school. I never signed a report. There was never a report filed. No one asked me about even Jay at that. Once I got the attorney, it was done. It was between the attorneys. But no one ever asked me any details, nothing. And then, for them to believe me about Jay Spencer and not about Dr. Borick, I mean, clearly they've believed that side of it. I don't understand that. I did, in real time, I have had a colleague who I told everything that was happening with Dr. Borick.
Well, and clearly they know, as I mentioned earlier, Mark DeMoss, who we believe was on the executive committee of the trustees at that point, he said he knew about the sexual allegations against Borick. In fact, his memory, and again, I mean, his memory is, we're talking about 27 years ago. Understandably, maybe he missed something, although it's kind of surprising that he would state that Borick was dismissed when he stayed on another 5 years and now is president emeritus and again on the board. Actually, that's kind of stunning. But Liberty says also in this statement that they have received no new information, and then they later rehired Jay Spencer. So there's nothing exonerating him or anything to that effect, but they have no new information. Then they rehired Jay Spencer for more than 10 years, so a decade. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, it shows a pattern. It shows that they want to put on a front that they care and that they're being transparent and that they have made changes. And right in that situation itself establishes what they've continued to do all along, and that's protect their own. And at the sacrifice of survivors. It's about the institution. It's about the money that's brought in. It's about, being the best that they can be with whomever can get them there, not caring about who they've harmed in the past or what their sins were or what their, to hire someone like that who they fired. It's a slap in my face. I actually didn't know that they had rehired him until 2023 when I started kind of looking and seeing that. And I was absolutely disgusted.
So here's the rest of Liberty's statement. Since then, which would have been 1998, 1999, Liberty has received no additional information about the incident or new allegations about those involved. More than 8 years after these matters were disclosed and settled, Spencer was rehired by the university as an academic administrator and served for a period of more than 10 years before leaving for another opportunity. Again, now he's at Houston Christian University. Over the years, the university has continued to strengthen and adopt policies, measures, employee guidelines, and resources that align with the industry standards to create a safe, secure, and non-discriminatory campus environment. Furthermore, Liberty holds all personnel to high biblical standards and prioritizes the well-being of our entire community. Rachel, I'll let you respond to that.
How do you respond when it's been such a public, the last, 10 years of Liberty have been so public, most recently into 21, 23, and now, they throw around biblical standards and campus safety, and it's just PR. It's just damage control script that they're trying to make, their alumni and their prospective students and parents feel good. But when you go back to the fact that in 98 and 99, when my situation happened, 2007, when they rehired Jay, and today, and you have 16 of the same board members on there and it hasn't changed. So until it changes, it will continue. And I believe there are other people, I know there are other people out there who have been quiet.
And as you mentioned, again, 16 of the original trustees that were there in 1998 and 99 are still at the university on the trustee board. Do you feel like there needs to be some resignations at this point of people who were culpable? Not only in this situation, but I also mentioned that there were 30 Jane Does who came with lawsuits against Liberty. And it almost seems like this has gotten completely brushed under the rug. I mean, we reported it, but those Jane Does say that, not all of them spoke after some of them took the settlements, but from what I understand, what was offered to them was a pittance. Nothing close to the, 6 figures that Jay Spencer got in 1999 as a result of his severance package at Liberty. What do you feel needs to happen at Liberty?
I think Liberty's proven over the last 3 decades that this runs deep, and it's an institutional and systemic problem that needs to change, and it's not going to change unless the people who have been there the last 30 years are removed. And that includes Jonathan Falwell, Jerry Vines, Jerry Prevost. They've all done this to numerous survivors over 30 years. And it will continue to be a good old boys club until the good old boys are removed. The articles that are coming out now about their pay and that how much money these men are making as a part-time position in a board of trustees, most of them, their titles are still head pastor or evangelist. And I would call out their churches too. It's not just at Liberty. They're not just doing this at Liberty. I would call them out too. If they're, there's scripture says, if someone's in Luke, someone's a little dishonest, where there's a little dishonesty, there's a lot more. And, you look at what the Jane Does were given. And I would even say with the Jerry Jr. scandal and John Carlo, I have a hard time believing that there were people there who didn't question early on what was going on and try to cover some of that up. And my heart aches for every one of those people. The men and women who have been fired as Title IX reps. Clearly, there's 2 lawsuits going on right now. There's no excuse. And do I think they should? I think they should be fired. But you see the power that they have, that it's going to take something big for that to happen, because it continues, and power and money continue to rule the roost at Liberty. and you throw in a little PR statement, it covers it up, and people go, oh yeah, they've changed. Look at the facts. I mean, you can't deny the facts. You can't deny the survivors and the victims that have come forward. But people have put this golden calf, behind the pulpit. Reminds me of Exodus, right? And they continue to let let liberty and this golden calf do whatever they want to survive under the term that it's a holy university. And there's not been change. We're 30 years. One of the things that I wish would happen was just recognize you did wrong. Recognize you handled it wrong. Recognize you've continued to handle it wrong and do better. You can expect the students of your university to uphold the rules that you write. And then those men themselves don't even follow them. And they, I love the Lord. Like, my relationship with him is the most important thing to me in my life. And I wonder how these men, how do they not fear? How do they not have a fear of a God who cares about me? Who cares about the Jane Does? Who cares about the Title IX that have been fired for standing up for truth and what's right? And over and over and over, liberty continues to do this. And until people realize, like we've made it very clear, who runs the culture of liberty, until they figure out what to do with that situation, it will continue. It's shown that. It continues. So what do I wish would happen? Like, I just wish that someone would go in above the good old boys and hold them accountable. Be accountable to each other. Be accountable to God. Be accountable to your wives, for Pete's sake, and your family. That's practice what you preach. Because the world's going to start seeing the hypocrisy, and it does nothing in regards to representing the God that we serve, that we all supposedly serve. I mean, is it going to happen, Julie? I think we've hoped this many times, and we can only pray and hope that change happens, because my story and the stories after me and the stories before me have to stop. There can be a no tolerance for this. None. And you have to, if you have known predators and known people who have sexually harassed, follow up. Jesus went after the one. Follow up with the one. Make sure nobody followed up with me. I can say, and I think that's what's given me the bravery to stand here today, besides God and I, like, we've packed this for 26 years. And I couldn't have done it without him. I couldn't.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. I report on the worst of the worst. I feel like I also work with some of the best of the best. And I would put you in that category. Your authenticity and the way, your resilience that you've been able to weather this is phenomenal. And the fact that you love the Lord, despite the fact that these men claiming to be followers of Christ have treated you so abysmally, to me speaks volumes about your character and your love for Jesus. I'm going to add to what you said so incredibly eloquently and articulately. I think people need to understand, those of you who are students at Liberty, and I want to speak directly to the students at Liberty University, because there are tens of thousands of you, there are hundreds of thousands of you who are alumni. Stop supporting this school until the changes are made, or otherwise, I mean, you signed the Liberty Way, making you responsible for narking on people, right? And now the people who wrote that Liberty Way, they don't want you to narc on them. They want to get off scot-free for what they did in this situation. And it's not allowed. It's not okay. So the only way this changes is if the supporters of Liberty University rise up and demand it. rise up and demand it. It is the only way this will change, is public exposure, embarrassment, and a movement of people that say enough. And if this hasn't been enough already, and honestly, if you care about the witness of Jesus Christ in our society, to allow this to continue, I mean, the embarrassment, Jerry Falwell Jr. was a product of all of this. He caused it, but he was also a product of it. It's been going on a long, long time. They've had this narrative that it's just Jerry Falwell Jr., that he's responsible for all of it. And now we know that's not true.
Yeah.
Now we know this has been baked into the system for an awful long time, where wrongdoing is just overlooked. Women are abused and they're cast off and they're thrown away. And that's what happens. So it is time for change institutionally at Liberty University. And of course, the reason we exist at the Roys Report is for change across evangelicalism, all of evangelicalism, because there's a number of organizations who are partnering with Liberty U if they stopped partnering. But the amount of money involved is huge. And we love mammon.
I would challenge the parents too, not just students,
100%.
like the parents. I have a college-age student, and would he be reading and listening to all the things? Probably not. But parents, like, pay attention. Pay attention. And when you send your daughter to that school, recognize what you're putting, where you're sending her. I mean, story after story after story, it's no secret, which is why they've hit it.
100%. And I appreciate you saying that. Again, there's been so much reporting. Gangster Capitalism did an incredible podcast series on this. How many have even bothered to listen to that series? So again,
that was the first thing I did after the USA. I found that podcast and I listened to that, and that really opened my eyes to a lot.
It's eye-opening for sure. They did a great job. There have been others, but it's time. It's time for reform. It's time for change. And Rachel, I just want to thank you so much for telling your story. May God protect you and go with you as you walk this out. And I pray too that this would be one more step in your own personal healing from something that was just a terrible injustice that was done to you.
Thank you, Julie. And this has been a long time that I haven't been able to heal. And thank you for giving me my story back. And when we talked last week, I told someone, I had two people come up to me and say, your countenance is totally different. And I said, I carried something for so long. And I finally feel like, I said, what I feel like is I volleyed a boulder onto someone else who could listen and who could hear me, hear my heart, know where my heart's coming from, and do something about it. So thank you.
Well, it's such a privilege, such a privilege and an honor to be able to do that. So thank you for trusting me. It's a huge step to be trusted in that way. So God bless you. Thank you again.
You.
Thanks so much for watching The Roys Report, a podcast dedicated to reporting the truth and restoring the church. I'm Julie Roys. And just a quick reminder that The Roys Report is listener supported. So if you appreciate these podcasts and want them to continue, would you please consider donating to The Roys Report? To give, just go to julieroys.com/donate. That's julieroys.com/donate. Also, please subscribe to The Roys Report on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. That way, you'll never miss an episode. And while you're at it, I'd really appreciate it if you'd help us spread the word about the podcast by leaving a review. And then, please share the podcast on social media so more people can hear about this great content. Again, thanks so much for watching. Hope you were blessed and encouraged.
we need to be talking about spiritual abuse and religious trauma.
This is a place where it's safe for those who have been hurt in churches. It is also a place for people to learn more about how to respond to those situations, and it is much needed.
Walking into the room, even taking the platform today, felt so safe. There was no nerves, there was no anything. There is an atmosphere of support and camaraderie and love that's here.
I think that it's really become a kind of a refuge. It's become a green pasture for people to come find one another. And so many times there's a solace. There is a restoration just in finding someone else that's experienced what you've experienced.
To know that there are people from all over the country, all over the world, who have experienced these same things, and they're uniting in Christ for healing, and I just think it's a beautiful experience.
It's not that we don't love the church, it's actually that we do love the church very, very much. And that's why we're having these kinds of conversations. It makes me feel less alone when I can talk with someone who's had a shared experience like that.
It was so cool to see, the room is packed and folks are eager to engage. They're encouraged, but they're also encouraging one another. And I believe that this is so good because the need is so great.
This conference is not only for those who've been victimized and hurt, but it is for people who want to be the answer now to what, sadly, the church in the last 30 to 40 years has covered up. And those who want to be on the cutting edge of how God is moving to vindicate, to show his justice, to bring his healing.
I just so believe in the power of story, and we need to unite. And so I just would welcome any survivor to come and know that you will be loved, you will be heard, you will be seen, and this is just a safe place for all of us.
We celebrate what God is doing. We celebrate that those that have been hurt and wounded by the church, that there's a place that they can come that's safe, and they can find healing, and they can find community, and they can be ministered to. We celebrate that. It is so amazing. And at the same time, we grieve that, right? I mean, how sad is it that we need to have a conference for people who have been wounded by the very place, the very institution that should be ministering healing to them?